Welcome to Reality Check, the real estate podcast, where you'll get a behind-the-scenes look at home buying, selling, and investing with your hosts, Jamie DeSimone with the Homes for All team at Keller Williams Capital Properties, and
Stacy Holscher with eXp Realty.
Every week, we'll bring you new content related to home buying, selling, and investing. But unlike most podcasts, we're going to shine a light on what happens behind the scenes. This show is good for anyone who has an interest in real estate, consumer and realtors alike. When considering a home purchase, many buyers aren't sure what exactly a buyer's agent can do for them. Many consumers incorrectly assume that their agent's job starts after they've unlocked the door. Little do they know. In this week's reality check, we will go over the duties and obligations of a buyer's agent and the reality of why 89% of U.S. home buyers did use a buyer's agent in 2023. All right, Stace, let's talk about why we like buyer's agents.
First, I just want to say that's a big number, Jamie. 89%.
That is 89%. I think that there's a lot of old school thinking that that the agent's job is to find you a home, and since we can go online and find homes ourselves, that what do we need a buyer's agent for? I can just go on Redfin or Zillow or any of these other online
do it by myself, yeah.
And do it by myself, and there we are. We found a home. We're done. But the reality is that the buyer's agent does literally a list of, well, they say 105 things. I would say it could be more than that, but there's a pretty extensive list of what the buyer's agent is doing behind the scenes. And that's what makes it look easy, right? That's what makes the buyers think that, oh, this person isn't really doing anything. Now, I do want to interject and say, not every agent is created equally, and occasionally there is probably somebody out there who is really not doing anything.
Yeah, they're probably not doing 105, maybe they're doing like 20.
Yeah. So I do want to, add the caveat that, you got to take everybody does things differently, but I know that we tend to work overtime with our buyers. We do a lot of hand holding. And, so we've broken this down into really 7 categories of what the buyer's agent does, but within those categories, there's a lot of steps. Yeah. So first and foremost, what do? We do counseling.
Yeah, and that is ongoing throughout the entire process.
That is. And that's not the therapy. That's a separate.
That comes later.
That comes later. But the buyer counseling, right? So the first thing we try to do is we try to sit down with the buyer, and we want to go over what it is that they want, what our role is. So there is a legal document that we sign. You want to talk a little bit about the buyer-agent agreement? You've probably heard about this. So let's talk about why that's important and what it covers for the buyer. Like how does it protect the buyer?
Yeah, so we have what's called a buyer agency agreement here in the state of Virginia, and every state has their own variation of what this is going to look like. But for the most part, it guarantees some loyalties and some commitments for each party.
But also protections, a lot of buyer protections.
Yes, most definitely. So it will say as the agent, here are the responsibilities that I have to the buyer. And as a buyer, here are your responsibilities. And as a buyer, it's really to just, be truthful and to have loyalty to that agent.
And keep
that
us
you're
in the
working
loop.
with. Yeah, and just keep us in the loop.
Tell us what's going on.
It's not in there, but don't buy a car, in the middle of the process or anything like that. But
and our job as a buyer's agent is to explain that to you throughout this process. But the other thing it does is it says that we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect your best interests. So, we want to make sure that you're buying the house that's best for you at that particular stage in your life, given your budget and your expectations. Sometimes it's our job to also break it to you that your expectations and your budget don't match the market. But again, that's all in the counseling. We need to really have an open dialogue with our clients about what it is that they need, what they expect from us, what we expect from them.
Yeah.
And
that
so forth.
Kind of brings us into the next section here, and that is a true needs analysis.
Right.
That's where your buyer's agent is going to ask a whole lot of questions to understand what you're looking for, your motivation, how you plan to use the home, and who's going to be using the home. We have lots of questions because we want to make sure that we have a really, really good understanding.
One of the favorite questions I ask people is, what are their favorite hobbies? Where do they go out? What do they like to do for fun? And people kind of look at me because some buyers, you come in and you're like, I need 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I don't know what else you need from me. And then I ask, well, what is your hobby? And they're like, kayaking. We kayak. And I'm like, well, where are you going to put those kayaks?
And they're like, what does this have to do with my 3-bedroom house?
Yes. And then, we decide whether they need storage or garage space, or what do their hobbies entail. Sometimes, not to get too deep into people's lives, but, if they currently have kids, but if they're planning to have kids in the near future with that home, like, what do they need? Do they have pets? Do they need fenced-in yards?
Jamie asked that question first.
I do. Yeah. I'm all about the pets. Also the whole understanding of how they use their home. Do they entertain a lot? Are they big cooks? Do they want to have a great big kitchen? Do you need separate rooms for relaxation? So do you need a space for your kids to go to watch TV and a space for the adults to go, or
a man cave or a she cave?
Yes, she shed. But constantly examining those. And part of our job, while you are telling us these things, especially as we start looking at homes, is to really go back and apply your needs to the properties that we're looking at. So we will point out that this property meets certain needs that you've expressed to us. Or in some cases, we help you narrow down that these needs that you originally thought were on your must list really aren't. Because once you start looking at properties, you'll realize that something else may bubble up that you didn't even think about.
Yeah, something else may become more important.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a lot of counseling. And then along with that, we're also helping you figure out, we're matching you with a lender, right? So we're doing that needs analysis is also a little bit of matchmaking. So we want to match you with a good lender. We recommend lenders. So let me dispel a myth here.
I was going to say, this can be a hot topic.
Let's dispel a myth. I get nothing for recommending a lender, other than like a phone call, an occasional cup of coffee when I hang out with them. I mean, literally, I get nothing. It's a RESPA violation. I cannot get any money for recommending a product or a service to somebody. What I do recommend are lenders that I know have the ability to get you to settlement, have the reputation in the industry to convince the listing agent that you are a good bet to go with.
The best bet.
The best bet, exactly. Because we're not just selling you to the listing agent and the seller, the lender has to sell you as well. And we also want to find somebody who's responsive.
Yeah.
Because if they're not answering their phone or doing a buyer letter on the weekends when chances are you're looking for a home, they're not going to help you.
Yeah, so the 1-800-BIG-BANK, more often than not, it's not going to work in your favor. And the crazy part is their rates usually aren't competitive.
Yeah. Well, every now and then there's credit unions or whatnot that'll come out with rates that, if you're a member, they're good. But I will tell you that some of those lenders actually cost their clients' properties in one way or another. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, either their clients don't even get their offers accepted because those particular institutions have such a bad reputation in the industry.
We won't name names.
No. Or it is because they put their clients in breach of contract for missing deadlines.
Which is huge and happens so often.
Yeah.
Jamie, if you could go back and think how many of your buyers have said to you, I should have used the lender you recommended. You were right.
That's a short list because I've been lucky in the sense that most of my buyers do use the lenders I recommend.
That's awesome.
So that's just something I was able to do from day one pretty well. I do get a lot of people that come in with, usually if they bring their own lender, it's somebody that they've used in the past.
Okay.
So they've had experience with them, and those people generally do okay. The ones I have had the worst experience with are the big online lenders or big banks that you hear about, where especially when you're calling into a call center.
Yes.
Those are the worst. They're absolutely the worst. I had one instance, oh my God. I had one instance where literally my client had a settlement, let's just say it was like the first of the month. Mm-hmm. And I was checking in with the lender about a week before settlement, and I said, are we still on track for the 1st? And the lender was like, well, we put settlement as the 10th. And I was like,
They just decided, huh?
The contract that my client is going to be in breach of and potentially lose their earnest money deposit says the first. So this is why you want to go with lenders that your agents recommend. We have good relationships with those people. Also, we give them business, right? They're going to bend over backwards to make sure our clients are happy. So there's also a little added layer of they're going to do their best to do the best for you.
They're going to do what they say they're going to do, because otherwise they might not get a future referral from us.
No, and definitely not. I will cut somebody off my list very fast.
Oh, very, very fast.
But at any rate, so we're helping you match that. We're helping you figure out what your budgets are. We are not trying to... One of the things I find myself doing, I don't know if you do this, is I have a buyer who comes to me and they say, my budget is $600,000. We're approved for $800,000, but we really want to buy a home in the $600,000 range. Well, first and foremost, I always tell people, don't look at $800,000 homes if your budget is $600,000, because you're always going to like it. You're going to like an $800,000 home more. That's just a given. But I will pull my clients back to their budget constantly until they finally say, no, we want to change it to whatever. Mm-hmm. But I am like your conscience. Like, I will keep pulling you back. You say you want to stick within a certain budget range. That's what I'm setting up your search for. And if you start sending me listings outside of that search that are higher, I'm going to keep saying, you told me you wanted to stick with this budget.
Did something change?
Did something change? This is, again, that transparency where we have to have a good conversation with each other. But what else? What else under there? Let's see, we're matchmaking people. Then we're helping them find the best homes. So now we're also educating the buyer.
There's a lot to educate the buyer on when it comes to the home buying process. So a lot of agents like to do a consultation with buyers when they meet them at first, and that's to do that needs analysis and then also to give them an overview of what the process looks like. It's not just showing a house and then saying, that's the one I want, and then it happens. There's a whole heck of a lot that happens behind the scenes.
And really, I want to focus on that for a second, because there's a lot of buyers who you've done some online research, and I'm not saying there's not good information online. There's great information online, but you only kind of get a partial picture by going online and doing your own research, and then you reach out and you say, hey, I want to go see this home on 123 Main Street. I want to take you through a buyer consultation before we go out and start looking at homes. And if somebody is not telling you to do that, they're doing you a disservice. Your buyer's agent should be preparing you for the market, should be preparing you for the home buying process, and should be preparing for you for when money is going to come up. Like, when do you need to bring a check to the table? It's not always just at settlement. There are multiple times through the process where you are either have to prepay for insurance.
You're paying someone.
You're paying home inspection. You might have to pay for an appraisal. There's things that you need to know before you just walk into a house and say, hey, I'm all ready to go put an offer in on this property. So what else do we educate the buyer on?
So we're going to educate them on, local information. Really commonly, we'll have folks moving from out of the area, and the most common question I think I get from folks moving out of the area is commute times and how long is it going to be to get from one neighborhood to another, which in the DMV area can be a little hard to predict, but we go with the worst traffic patterns for sure. So we're going to ask about neighborhoods and areas, commute times, transportation, how to get from point A to point B. Right. If you're just moving to the area, you might not know about slug lots or slugging, which
if you don't know about slugging, right? We're going to keep that to ourselves. But we also talk about fair housing, right? Let's talk about what restrictions people can't put on you, and part of the reason why you want a layer in between you and the seller is, and that's not the listing agent, you want your own representation, is really to help circumvent some of those fair housing issues that may come up should people have direct contact. For better or for worse, there's unconscious bias. For sure. And unfortunately, that's just a reality of the world. And by having somebody protecting you from that, and when I say protecting you, we're doing both. We're making sure that nobody does anything unethical on their side, but we're also we're the face of your purchase at that time. So they don't know what's going on. They just know that you're qualified. So we also want to make sure that your information remains confidential. Right? We have a duty to protect your privacy. I don't know why that was so hard to say. We have a duty to protect your privacy. We share information in as much as it will help get you the property. Like sometimes what I've used, I'm a pet person, in case you haven't figured that out yet. I'll be like, oh, my client saw that you have 3 dogs and you have a great fenced-in yard. My client also has 3 dogs, and they can't wait to use your fenced-in yard for their 3 dogs.
Their dogs will love it.
The dogs will love it, and I'm helping to create like a familiarity and some sort of connection between the seller and the potential buyer. And then helping direct people to correct resources for school information, crime statistics, all that stuff. So a lot of education of the buyer. What else we got to do?
Well, then it's actually preparing the buyer for the process. And you might be thinking, isn't that what all this was already?
Yeah. No, you're not prepared yet.
But you're still not quite ready. We're going to start with, starting at that consultation, we're going to talk about, to get ready, what does the timeline look like? Some people don't really know. And the timeline can vary greatly. You could meet me today and possibly move into a house in, 10 days. Or you could meet me today and, we could go to the closing table in 2 years from now.
Right.
It can be
that
huge
happens.
Differences.
It depends whether you have a lease. Are you moving? Do you have a house to sell or a property to sell? Can you buy while you still own another property? Understanding the local market. The local market in DC Metro, it changes. It's on cycles, just like other markets. But especially people coming from outside the area, they don't understand what our cycles are. They also might not understand seasonal cycles and or just understanding, people with kids versus people without kids have different buying cycles.
Yeah.
You're not beholden to a school year. Understanding the average days on market, understanding what the market statistics are for list price to sale price ratio. So, right, if a house is selling at, if the average homes prices are selling at 102% of the list price, what does that mean?
Selling for 2% over.
Right.
And it's not just that neighborhood, what the average sale to list, but as a buyer's agent that's savvy, I like to look into the listing agent. What's their average sale to list
exactly.
ratio too?
Yeah. Looking at the background, seeing how they tend to close their sales, getting a little bit of an insight about their sellers, and trying to give you as much data as you can so you structure the best offer. But the other, we're also helping you be prepared for heartbreak sometimes, right? Along with that counseling, sometimes you may find your dream house and that was 25 other people's dream house too.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. So we kind of have to help keep you in the game and keep your spirits up and remind you that this isn't, that we're going to find you the best house. Everything happens for a reason. But, and then understanding the contracts.
Yeah, contract, what your legal obligations are based on that contract, what has to happen when, by who. There's a lot of moving pieces. Mm-hmm. And outside of the contract, it's the money financially, what to expect.
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier, but it's not just money at the closing table. You're going to have some financial obligations before you get there.
Yeah. And closing costs. They're talking about closing costs, which is different from your down payment, which is different from your earnest money deposit, which is, although earnest money deposit rolls up, but these are all different monies that are involved. So helping you understand those. So we've done all this analysis and we've educated you. And now you're ready to what?
The fun part. We get to go look at houses.
Now we get to go look at houses. Now we got to schedule those properties.
We don't just show up.
No, we don't just show up. Okay. No, there's all sorts of rules about when we can show. Every property has different rules, how we can access it, when we can show it, whether it's occupied or not. There's rules for everything. So we have to go see what each rule is for that property. We have to get it scheduled. We have to turn into masters of maps, timing, and transportation challenges that might come with going from property to property?
Yes, most definitely. It was really fun during COVID times.
Oh my God. Yeah.
When most properties were doing 15-minute showings.
15-minute showing increment. And if you were 5 minutes late, too bad.
You lost some time. I think I did some 7 a.m. showings that year. That was fun. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then we also have to do as much due diligence as we can on the property. So I'll go back and look at the history, not the sales history. A lot of stuff you can find online. Yes, you can go look and see how much a property sold for before. That really has no bearing on anything. How much somebody bought a house for 10 years ago has no bearing on how much you're going to buy it for today. But I'll find out what I can about the condition of the property. Going to share with you. I mean, we share with you as much as we can about what we know about the seller. Are they selling in a distressed? Are they getting divorced?
Yeah, what are their needs? Maybe they want to rent the house back, for a couple months so their kids can finish out the school year. Part of that is fact finding. That's what we're doing.
But I would say also a big part of our job is to help you narrow that search. So we sat down and we did a buyer needs analysis with you, and you said 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and we went through all these other things, right? And now you get excited because you're like ready to go look at homes. You got your pre-approval letter, you got everything, all your ducks are in a row, and you're like, let's go out and look at homes. And then, well, if they're out there, then you send me a list of 12 homes you want to see tomorrow.
And half of them are under contract.
Well, yeah, that's one challenge. But let's just say they're not under contract yet, and they send you those 12 homes. My job is to really help narrow that down. So that's why I got to know you. That's why I asked questions, right? That's why you asked the questions. We have expertise. How many neighborhoods have you been to?
Probably just about every neighborhood you could think of in Northern Virginia. Yeah.
We've been to all the neighborhoods. We've seen all the HOA documents. We have seen the condo association documents. We know specific layouts of certain floor plans in certain communities. We know the amenities in certain communities. We know that these homes here have garages and these homes here don't.
Certain neighborhoods that have certain styles and architecture of homes. So, a buyer who maybe doesn't want a single level home, there are some neighborhoods where they are predominant, and we know that ahead of time.
Or vice versa, right? So my job after we've gone through this needs analysis is to now let's narrow that down. So let's go. That's not to say I'm only ever going to show you 5 homes, but on our first outing, we're not going to look at more than 5 homes, frankly, because they'll make you dizzy, right?
I usually say 4, so she's nicer than me.
I'm nicer.
It's on the record now.
Anyhow, but narrow it down to a smaller amount of homes that meet your needs. If you want to go kick tires at other properties that might be outside your price range, or properties that are in neighborhoods that are outside where you wanted to be, those kind of things, there's open houses that you can go to do that. But I want to help you pinpoint where you want to be, right? We don't want you wasting your time running around to a bunch of places, submitting a bunch of offers that may or may not get accepted. We want you to focus your time and attention on the things that you want specifically that meet your needs.
Yeah, we're going to ask all those questions and do that due diligence to move you along through the process on your timeline, but we're still going to keep things moving along once we know what that timeline is.
We are the keepers of the checklist.
Yes.
So then we also are information for... Have you ever had a buyer say, this is a great house, I want to put a garage on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? So what do we need to know a little bit about?
We're going to need to know about what the county or the local city or whatever zoning ordinance you're dealing with, what their rules and regulations are, or at least how to find that information.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to claim to be up to date on every single law that goes on with zoning. But I do know, we typically know, experienced agents who are out in the field every day, they know what questions you need to ask. So before you go doing an addition on a property, we know what to tell you to ask, what kind of research you need to do before you can make that decision. So if you're buying a home contingent on being able to put a pool in the backyard, well, you can't just say, hey, it looks like enough space for a pool, this is going to work. So we're going to, again, through that needs analysis, and now we're showing homes, we're going to be able to say, hey, I know you want to put a pool here, but this is what you need to do that pool. So if you only want this home contingent on the ability to do a pool, then we need to have a contingency that allows for that research. So that kind of stuff. Then you're lucky enough, you find a home.
Yay!
Then what do?
Well, now it's offer time, which is exciting as well.
It is. It's offer. But chances are, as a buyer, you have not seen a buyer's contract before, which are quite lengthy. Very lengthy, a lot of addendums, a lot of disclosures, a lot of legalese. So it's our job to explain that document to you. And please, please don't just randomly sign off on them.
It makes me so nervous when my clients sign the offer in 20 seconds.
Like, I will sit down and be like, I will explain this to you. No, this is good. Price. Okay, great. Sign. Can I explain it to you first?
We love the trust, but
yes, please let me explain it to you first. So that's our job. Our job is to explain it to you. Our job is to help you understand your outs, what your contingencies are, how to protect your earnest money deposits, how to make sure that you don't get stuck with a lemon. We can do as much as we can do to do that. We often, I don't know about you, but one of the things I do is I will write up an offer summary, a suggested offer summary.
Yeah.
So when my client has, you've said, hey, I want this house, I don't just say, great, tell me what you want to offer on it. I mean, that's my job to help direct you into that. So I pull the CMA. I tell you what I think the best that it's going to appraise for. I give you my best experience on how many. I've talked to the listing agent, right? What do we ask the listing agents? We have to call them.
Well, first we're hoping that they answer the phone.
Yeah, and we have to suck up. Sucking up.
Oh, so much sucking up. I am so excited to work with you. I see your signs everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Very exciting. But we're going to also ask some basic questions about what's going on with the property. Do you have any offers in hand? Do you have any offers registered, which is, someone promising that they're going to send one, which may or may not pan out.
Right.
We're going to ask what, other than the price, what are the seller's ideal terms? What are they looking for?
Because sometimes there's terms like settlement dates sometimes have more influence over a price. So if you have the ability to close in 2 weeks versus 2 months, that may make a difference to a seller because they have a home of purchase contingency on their side or something that's going on.
Yeah, in competitive markets, you're not going to get a second chance to put in that offer. So we want to help you craft it so that it is as strong as possible. That's within your comfort level.
Oh yeah, that is key. So pay attention to what Stacy just said. We want to stay within the parameters that you've given us and in your comfort area to submit an offer. We will always, so I tend to phrase things as, this is what I suggest you do. This is what I suggest you do to win the offer.
Yeah.
So depending on the type of market we're in, I may suggest that you forego certain contingencies in order to win the offer because it's all fine and dandy to hang on to something. We want you to have all the contingencies. Let's be very clear.
Oh, I would much prefer
we want all the contingencies.
Protection built in.
We do.
Every time.
But the realities of our market in this area, at least at this point of time, is that that's not always an option. And our job is to help you figure out which one of those you can get rid of safely and which ones you can't. So we will help you kind of decide that. Again, we always want to have you have the contingencies, but we also want to help you win the offer. And you're never going to buy a home if you're just always if you're not willing to be a little bit flexible with some of that stuff. So we want to give you the best strategies. We also want to keep ahead of like the financing issues that may come up with properties. So different kinds of properties have different kinds of financing. What do we know about condos?
Well, we know that condos, well, first and foremost, I mean, they come with resale disclosures.
Yeah,
which
they do.
Is a whole separate little conversation in itself, probably.
And they may or may not qualify for...
And they may or may not qualify for FHA or VA funding, which means if you are using that type of loan, you're going to run into some hiccups there.
Right. which is again why we always need to be transparent with our clients, because if you change loan type at one point, we need to know, because the property you're looking at might not qualify under that loan type. If you're looking at a property with VA financing that needs a lot of repairs, we need to be able to walk through that property understanding that the VA appraiser is going to call out certain things like railings and steps for safety issues, and have that conversation with you ahead of time. I mean, like, we need to know those things so that we can tell you what to expect.
Yeah, and if you happen to have a financing contingency built into that offer, it's even more important that you tell us if you're going to change your loan terms, so that we can do our best to try to keep that contingency in place and protect you until settlement.
Right. Because there's all kinds of strategies we can employ, but we always want to protect you as best we can. So yeah, we got that offer. Hopefully you got it accepted, right? And then what's the next set of stuff that we deal with?
Well, and that's when we start advocating for our buyer and doing everything we can to get them to the finish line.
Right, because now the hard work, you think all the stuff we've done so far is difficult. Now we have to keep everything moving forward. And sometimes that's keeping our clients in line with getting things to the lender that they need to get, helping them understand what the lender's asking for.
Because they're going to ask for a whole lot of stuff, and sometimes it's going to feel really random. Like, they need your tax returns from...
Oh, and they're going to ask for it again.
Yeah.
They're going to ask for it first time, and then they're going to ask for it one more time.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like,
I sent that to you already.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, we need you to upload it again.
Yeah. So, and
be prepared.
We keep you from losing your mind for that. So then we make sure that any repairs that have been negotiated are done. We make sure that we're getting receipts, that those repairs have been done to the satisfaction of our clients. We make sure that HOA documents and condo documents have been cleared and all that stuff. We
work with the title company to make sure everything is moving along smoothly in the title and deed world. So making sure there's no clouds on the title and there's going to be no issues transferring that deed over.
And there's because what do we run into a lot? Or tax liens on properties. Mechanics liens.
You'd be surprised how many sellers don't know that they have liens on their property.
Right, and that becomes difficult if our client has a deadline that they need to be out of a property, and we run into a hiccup that's going to delay settlement. So we need to make sure that, I always tell my clients, I promise you won't be homeless. Unless our plan is for you to be homeless, because I actually have had some clients where, like, we're going to go move in with my family for a month. If that's the plan, that's the plan. But I don't want you to be homeless. Stacy doesn't want you to be homeless. No. So we want to make sure that everything is moving along and on time and is going to go to settlement when you plan. We're going to help you line up your utilities and your movers and change your postal addresses and change your microchip information on your pets. We're going to make sure that the lender's got everything they did. And then right before settlement, what do we do?
The walkthrough.
Right.
Which is really exciting because as a buyer at this point, you probably haven't been at the house in a couple of weeks, and it's usually a day or so, or sometimes same day when you're going to get the house. So there's a lot of excitement at those walkthroughs. There is.
There's a lot of fun. And so we walk through and make sure the property is in substantially the same condition as it was when you said you were going to buy it. We want to make sure that that everything is moved out, that everything is done according to the terms of the contract. So it really depends what the contract said is going to happen. We want to make sure that it's in that condition. We want to make sure we get you the keys.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at how many times people don't show up with keys.
Our local contract actually does not say that a certain number of keys have to come with the house.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So at any rate, but we want to make sure that you have a way to get into this house that you have just bought. We want to make sure that you have wired your money appropriately, that there's no fraud that has taken place, that you're not sending your money off to some foreign entity in another country that has sent you a fake email.
Which
happens more often than you would think.
It's really sad.
So these are all the things that we want to do.
Review the final numbers.
Oh yeah, right? we review your closing disclosure to make sure.
Your lender's going to send final numbers over, and a big part of what I love to do is go through that before we go to the closing table with my buyer, so that they understand exactly where every penny is going, and everything is what they expected it to be.
Yeah. There should be no surprises by that point, but you'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised how many surprises.
How many surprises there are, or how surprised people may be if they have not been properly educated on what to expect. So we want to make sure that so these are all the things that the buyer's agent is doing for you to get you to settlement. So it's not just as simple as unlocking a door. We hope that you really appreciate working with the buyer's agent and you want to go out and develop that relationship. As always, if you're looking to buy or sell a house in Northern Virginia or DC,
or Maryland.
Or Maryland. Please reach out to Stacy or I, and we would be happy to help you. And if I haven't already mentioned this before, make sure you spay and neuter your pets. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you sign on to follow our podcast for future episodes, and we appreciate any questions or comments that you have. So thank you.